Welcome back to the channel. I am Niladri Mukherjee and I am a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I practice in Mississauga, Ontario. So what are the advantages of a Canadian startup visa program? Or in other words, if you are considering between a multiple provincial immigration program, provincial entrepreneurship program, any other business immigration program as compared to startup visa program, what are the advantages that you should typically look at? Not to be inferred as this is the best program amongst all. No, it really has to fit into your situation, but it definitely does offer a couple of unique advantages that, in my opinion, all the other business immigration programs do not. First and foremost, you have to understand is that there is no such minimum investment amount that is being required. Meaning that if you get a support from a designated incubator or a venture capital fund, and that if you are able to bring at least a certain amount of money, it doesn't have to be a lot of money, and it is really up to you to prove that that money is enough for the business to be established, you could still immigrate to Canada with your family members under the Canadian Startup Visa program. Please do not think that it's a cheap program. It is one of the cheaper options amongst all the business immigration programs. And if you talk about the cost, give or take, you're looking at about 150,000 Canadian dollars end to end, A to Z, for everything about startup visa, including the amount of money that you need to invest. So you are really not paying $150,000 to anybody to do the work. You have to hire a consultant or a lawyer if you want, but that's $150,000 is really the total amount of money that you need for everything, including the investment amount, which is substantially cheaper as compared to any other provincial entrepreneurship program or federally run business immigration program that you talk about. So that's, to me, is definitely the advantage number one. No business experience required. So technically speaking, the government of Canada lays emphasis on your entrepreneurship ability, on the innovative business idea that you are going to bring into Canada, right? Under this startup visa program. So the innovative business idea is what is something that is giving most prominent importance to, as against the amount of money that you are bringing, right? So if you have an innovative idea and if you could prove that yes, definitely that innovative idea has a future, is able to generate employment in Canada, is able to give employment to Canadian peers and citizens, your work permit and eventually your permanent residency will be approved. So even if technically if you are a fresher with no such business experience yet with an innovative idea, you could still qualify under the Canadian Startup Visa program. But practically speaking, business experience is something that is being preferred, and over 90% of the clients, I would say 80 to 90% of the clients that I end up working with have some kind of a business experience. But I have also worked successfully with clients who have been professionals with absolutely no business experience but with a strong business acumen, with a fantastic innovative idea, have made it to Canada. So technically speaking, you do not need to have any proven previous business experience under the Canadian Startup Visa programs. That's advantage number two. The third one should be a no net worth verification. If you are considering any provincial entrepreneurship program, you have to understand that your net worth in terms of proven documentation needs to be audited and verified and traced by a designated Canadian audit firm. What does this mean? It means that it involves money, it involves costs, the processing time goes up, and secondly, and most importantly, if you do not keep a trace of all your documentation from day one of your company incorporation, your net worth certificate will not give enough value and hence your work permit could potentially be rejected. This step, which in my opinion is a fairly complicated step, doesn't really exist in Canadian Startup Visa program. So that's definitely an advantage that one should be looking at. Fourthly, this is not a provincial program. Canadian Startup Visa is being run by the federal government of Canada with no conjunction with any such province, meaning that friction is low. Whenever there is a PNP, whenever there is a provincial nominee or anything related to provinces involved, there are two-level verification, there are two-level background checks happen, one at the provincial level, one at the federal level. The work happens at two levels, one at the federal, one at the provincial. Here you're dealing with directly with the federal government of Canada with no such friction with the provincial government, meaning that processing time for work permit is quite faster as compared to any other entrepreneurship program. I'm coming to the fifth point, which is a processing time, but which is being directly linked with this fourth point. So technically speaking, if you look on paper, The permanent residency under startup visa program takes about 30 months, 28 to 30 months. Is this for real? Yes, it is for real. Permanent residency does take time, about 2 years in my experience for startup visa. But what you have to understand is that you do not have to wait outside Canada for those many months and those many years. You can be very well be inside Canada with your spouse and children with their valid legal status under work permit. So if your work permit under Canadian startup visa is approved, you can come to Canada on a work permit. Your spouse can get an open work permit. Your child under 22, your children under 22 can get study permits as well. So your entire family can come, and span of the processing time, in case of startup visa work permit, is literally about 3 to 4 months from my practical experience. That's really nothing. If you're applying for a study visa from India under non-STS stream, that takes about 13 weeks, and the startup visa complicated applications such as startup visa takes about 3 to 4 months for the work permit approvals. You can come to Canada, start your life almost as a PR, and then your PR thing gets into processing. So startup visa processing time for work permit is quite faster as compared to any other program, literally any other program that I could potentially think of. And as I have mentioned, your family could come with you as well from day one, right? Another advantage is that you could practically live anywhere as against any other entrepreneurship program that will let you oblige to be residing onto that very province. For example, if you're coming under an entrepreneurship program under PEI, you have to technically live in PEI for a certain period of time, even if you do not want to live in to PEI, for example. But being a federally run program such as Canadian Startup Visa, you could practically come to anywhere. An interesting point to note is that, for example, if you get a support from a designated incubator here based out of Kitchener, for example, and if you want to establish your business in Vancouver, again, for example, you could very well do that. Now imagine you're getting a support from a designated incubator in Ontario and maybe establishing your business in the Atlantics, which means that you incur way less costs in terms of your business establishment. So that mathematics is something that is very, very client specific, but technically speaking, you can live anywhere and there is no problem with you changing provinces, changing cities or whatever, as long as you meet other requirements as well. So that's an advantage to me for sure. Most importantly, that what clients ask me these days is that how long this whole process takes. My consultants told me that it is going to take 30 months. Is it true? PR does take time. I don't know whether it is going to take 39 months or 30 months or 29 months or whatever, but it does take about 2 years, give or take. But as I have said, the processing time for Canadian Startup Visa is way faster as compared to any other programs. If you are somebody that meets all the required criteria of Startup Visa, and I have already made a detailed video on that I will link down in the description below. Watch that video if you would like to understand what all criteria you have. Go to the Government of Canada website and take a look there as well. That is very important. And if you need me to consult you on your situation, please feel free to drop me a line, contact@nuvonation.ca. Book a consultation. That is the first step before we engage with the client. So book a consultation, let me assess everything for you, and suggest the way forward. I hope this helps. If you need assistance, as always, send me an email. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye now.